All right, Jeff, we're good to go. How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
And Lauren's here. Lauren's back. You want to say hello?
Hi.
Right. Can you leave your phone alone?
No, because it
Hi,
has my
Lauren.
notes on it.
Oh, it's got your notes
Yeah.
on it. Right. Yeah, we don't use pen and paper anymore, right? At the age of 13. No, okay. All right. Well, do you want to fire away with your first question?
What is Blockstream?
Oh, that's a great question, Lauren. Thank you. Blockstream is a Bitcoin company, a full stack Bitcoin company, we like to say. And what that means is that we develop and help to advance the technology that's used for Bitcoin. I think if you think about it from sort of a mission perspective, I think Blockstream's goal is really to enable more people and more businesses to use Bitcoin to help drive adoption, and to make Bitcoin more useful for a wider range of use cases and needs. So just making it generally more useful and more available. From a more user-centric point of view, I think Blockstream's goals are really around enabling people to kind of have the option to come to like a sort of modernized form of money and finance, to kind of replace yesterday's arcane infrastructure that requires people to interface with a lot of sort of centralized actors who have a privileged position, who can extract rent and control the system to enable them to operate in an environment where we replace all of that with openness and verifiability of the system, allowing you to transact and trade with people around the world in sort of a trust minimized way.
So basically helping people to buy Bitcoin, if I have that correct.
Not just to buy Bitcoin, but to hold it securely and to use it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot of important things going on over at Blockstream. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so, no.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Jeff. We'll come back to that. We'll dig into that in more detail a little bit later on in the show. But as I was explaining at the beginning here, a lot of people they resonate with like the hero's journey or the pleb's journey. I suppose we'll use the pleb's journey.
Yes,
that
that's more
that
fitting.
person that discovered Bitcoin, found Bitcoin, had the mind virus work on them, all of the epiphanies, all of the, stars falling into line, managing to leave the fiat world, the corporate America world or corporate, country of your choice world, and end up working at a Bitcoin company and, really working on some kind of passion project. So let's take it back to pre-Bitcoin.
Sure.
What was Jeff doing, growing up as a young man in fiat land, hadn't even thought about sound money, most likely. Where were you, what was going on, like, going through college, and was there any
Yeah.
kind of were you primed, were there some of those moments when you look back that primed you for Bitcoin? Anything that stands out?
That's a great question. I haven't even necessarily thought about it that way myself. I would say yes. I guess, my career started kind of in sort of the dawn of the internet, right? I mean, my as a coming out of college as a young software developer, I was helping to build web applications in the dot-com boom. And I think, what was very exciting about the internet, especially early on, was the fact that it was this open, permissionless system that enabled people to access information and share information. And so I think kind of the bringing down the barriers for access to information, I think, was kind of the calling card of the web and the promise of the web, and something that I thought was very compelling to me. And, I guess like I'm just going to fast forward a step to finish that thought. When I got to Google, I spent some time at Google in my career. I think Google really embraced that mission. Of course, they had a business motive as well, but actually Google truly did, see their role as one to help enable people around the world to get access to great information from the open web. And a lot of what Google built was really built by people who believe strongly in that purpose. And so that was kind of like a principle that I think really resonated with me and probably has stuck with me even today. Another, I think, moment in my life was, one of the things I did as a developer was I spent some time working in kind of on fiat payments. So I actually helped to develop an ACH based settlement solution that was used for kind of merchant websites. This is in the early days of the web again, but I could see firsthand how, and this is ACH is a system that's used for settlement in the US, but the multi-day process and all of the kind of edge cases that you had to deal with as a developer before you could actually finally confirm that the money had actually moved, it probably wouldn't get clawed back in some form. And all of those pain points, left you wondering, why is it so complicated? Why does it work this way? And so I think that the impression I got of a system that very much needed to be upgraded was one that I also took note of. So I think these were kind of formative, concepts that probably really made the idea of something like Bitcoin, like a natural wonder to me when I finally did start paying attention to it. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
So what years were you going through college then? Doing
I
the software.
graduated college in 1997.
Whoa, man.
Yeah,
Okay. Right at
yeah,
the cutting edge
dinosaur.
then.
That's right. That's right. My first email address was at university, so
Hmm.
so different time than I think my kids today. So
So you remember the yeah, we're probably around the same age then. I was born in 76. So
75.
right, okay. Right. So you remember then the computer turning up in your front room. And you
I
remember
do.
right. And wow, like what a time. What a weird moment. What was it?
Oh my gosh. I honestly don't even know. It's kind of funny as a kid, I was more interested in the Nintendo than I was
Right.
in the computer.
Because
I
they
think
were
it
all
really,
coming out at the same time, weren't they? I remember like you had the
yeah,
Super Nintendo or the Mega Drive in the UK. That they were the two.
yeah,
And all the yeah, and before that we'd had the Atari, and everybody was going mad for that, and you wanted to be friends with the person who had one.
yes.
But then we started getting like the Amigas, the Commodores and Amstrad computers, which would be more
I
like
had
a
some Texas
desktop.
Instruments computer. I don't remember. I
Right.
grew up in Dallas, Texas, so that's probably where I would have found it. But yeah, for me, really, my big awakening to even like the technical world was in college, starting to learn computer programming and really start to understand how these systems worked. So maybe it was a little later than most.
Wow. I'm just trying to think how different like a programming course today would look to what you were doing back in the mid 90s. What was that course looking like?
I mean, it was all in C programming, introductory level C programming. Then we started learning web technologies. We still called writing HTML programming back then, but I started to learn how to build a website. And one of my internships in college was to help like a recruiting firm create a dynamic website that could take their database of job listings and put them on the web without having a manual, entry process in between. And it was such a delight to me. I mean, what just like spending the time to learn how to apply these technologies and build something yourself, that could deploy something like this on the web, it really sort of pivoted my entire plans for my life, into tech. Just the process of building something, a technical product, and that's really kind of been my, what drives me and what gets me going every day is like building products that help people, solve problems. And so that's, I guess like that really changed my ideas of what I wanted to do.
Were you all kind of competing for jobs, or were you walking straight out into jobs? I'm just trying to get an idea of the landscape, because you would have been few and far between. Something so technical and so new, and people needed so much help with. I mean, just making a website back in that time was like considered, you were considered to be an illusionist or a magician if you could knock one of those out.
I started my career at one of the, I guess at the time it was like the big six firms, like it was Price Waterhouse, in their software, like IT division. And they were not just looking for computer science majors, because there weren't enough of them. They were going out and hiring people from a wide breadth of degrees. They had a program where they would kind of test your aptitude for programming. Did you think like a software developer should think? And then they bring you in, and it was almost like another semester of college. They put you through a crash course of all these, computer programming skills training kind of things. And then they turn around and start selling your skills to their clients. So it's clever on their part, but they were sourcing from beyond computer science, because that's how you had to do it back then.
Right. How did you end up at Google then?
Well, after I say about 6 years of working as a software developer, I felt like my opportunity to have impact and the kind of problems that I wanted to focus on felt too constrained, kind of working in the software development world. I did something that's very cliche. I went to business school.
Yes, it is actually, isn't
down
it?
that
Yeah.
path. When you don't know what to do, go to business school.
Well,
And
we've skipped over a very important. My bad. We skipped over the 2000 .com bubble. You must have still been at PwC at that point.
I jumped ship from PwC. I joined a startup that raised a bunch of VC money, and then surprise, surprise, actually didn't have a robust strategy or plan. Spent all that money, went out of business. Then I actually joined a payment company, and that's where I was doing my ACH work. It got acquired by one of these big, like, boring payment services firms called First Data Corporation, still around. And that felt oppressive to me, like being in that environment, working in that kind of a environment. I just knew I needed something different. And so I went to business school kind of with a plan to possibly completely re-divert my life into a different direction, but I came right back to tech. And Google hired me out of business school as a product manager. And I stayed there for over 13 years. So really didn't plan to do that. I had always intended to kind of steer back into smaller sized ventures and so forth, but it was an incredible place to learn and to really work on a wide breadth of technologies and serving a really obviously like huge user base with your work. So I found it very fulfilling for a very long time, and so I ended up staying much longer than I had planned.
Right. We'll do Google justice in a second. I just want to get what was going through your mind and like everybody's mind back in leading up to 99, 2000. So much money sloshing around. Everybody thought like every single name a company and put .com at the end of it, and you're going to get VC money. Pretty much was what
Correct.
It felt like. Was
Correct.
that feet on the ground? Yeah, go ahead.
That's absolutely right. Wow. I mean, I in San Francisco, I was a young adult in San Francisco, and all around, I mean, any night of the week, some company was having its launch party. I mean, I don't think I paid for a dinner for about a year. I was just like wandering around to random like launch parties to get free food. And I mean, it was just a lot of throwing darts from the VCs. They knew they were onto something big. it seemed like you just could just take kind of retail brick and mortar style ideas, move them into this web world, and then they're just going to work. And then, reality came crashing down, and, then everybody thought it's all worth nothing. But of course, there actually were the seedlings of like really important and valuable companies that had emerged from that. And then, a few years later, that became very apparent.
Certainly a strange time to have watched it. Yeah, I watched it from my seat. I was in financial markets, and we were brokering foreign exchange. That was our job. But everybody was watching equities. Every single person, like the foreign exchange markets went dead for a good 2 years, because brokers and bankers were all making their money just trading the latest hot tip, and everybody was sharing. It was such a bubble environment to be part of. It was just nuts from afar. So now, like talking to you, feet on the ground, I mean, just cruising launch parties for your dinner, like that's.
You see these patterns repeating, right? I mean, I would say that the cryptocurrency industry writ large, Web3, right, is another example of there's something here, we don't understand it, fund everything, and let's see what shakes out. I think AI is actually going through its own phase of this as well. So, these things, maybe they're happening like faster and in parallel now than they did back then, but I mean, this is the fruits of technology progress, right? It keeps creating these. We know we're on the precipice of something. It keeps creating these opportunities for kind of like a wide range of diversity of investment to flow in, and then you see what kind of comes out on the other end.
So, what do you get taught during an MBA? What do you take away from that, and what can you tell the plebs that are considering going to do the cliche MBA thing themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at it purely from a financial investment point of view, it's hard to defend, maybe. I mean, because you're taking 2 years of removing yourself from the job market, unless you do kind of the evening weekend, which is not what I did. And so you have that opportunity cost, plus you're paying money, you're probably taking on some debt. It's a big investment. And so I think you need to kind of go into it with an intent to make some choices. And like usually I think it's a really good way to initiate a change process in your career. I feel like careers often seem to operate with inertia. I did this, I got good at it. I never thought I was going to be an expert in payments, but here I am. I'm working in this industry, and do I really want to do this? And if you want to be more generalized, if you want to change into a different discipline, I think an MBA gives you an automatic reset button for doing those kinds of things. And the kind of skills you learn there, they don't feel very academic, the classes, but actually you are covering a really wide breadth of topics that are relevant in a business environment, from accounting to, micro and macroeconomics to, lots of different concepts in finance and marketing. And all these things, to me, coming from like a very technical place, were novel. I mean, like I learned a lot from getting exposure to those things. And I think I sort of subconsciously incorporated it into my product thinking going forward, being able to consider factors that relate to brand marketing as part of my, decisions to help enhance a product. Those are things that you get kind of that reinforce for you. And I think ultimately for me felt like it opened up this new career trajectory that I followed ever since. And I'm grateful for that.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, it's definitely something for people to consider now, especially Bitcoiners. And I wonder when they start incorporating a little Bitcoin course in there as well, because they've changed the accounting rules as of next year, right? That's going to be, you can now account for it on the balance sheet, as Saylor has been talking about. So yeah, a little Trojan horse.
That's a really interesting idea. I think when Bitcoin hits the business schools, we've crossed another threshold.
Yeah, yes.
Just in terms of it being kind of one of the I think the places where more traditional thinking has like always applied. So, but I mean, I do think that there will be some schools that take it on first, and will probably have an edge to their students. So, you know, I expect it to happen,
Mm.
but it'll be interesting to see the timetable. You know, some of these things move slower than we expect.
All right, let's talk about Google, because we have been inside the belly of the beast ourselves. We
Okay.
visited, is it, what's it called? Google Plex or Google, what,
The
where,
Googleplex here in the Bay Area,
yeah,
or somewhere else.
yeah,
Okay.
the place.
That's
Um,
that's the place that I worked for 13 years.
were you there in 2016?
I was.
All right. Well, if you saw a family walking around with 4 kids following them around, then that
Uh-huh.
was us.
Okay.
Funny story about that. We were house sitting for our friends in San Francisco, and it happened to be the night where you had to take your trash down. It was like one night they come and pick it up. It's up in Russian Hill, and as we were down there, a guy next to me had all of his bins out and he was trying to jam a load of stuff in there. And I'm like, man, do you want to use ours? Like, we've got hardly anything in here. And he was so grateful because he'd just moved in. So he's like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, yeah, fill it up. Come on. I'm helping him get his crap out. And we just got to talking. And he said he worked at Google. And I was like, oh wow, that'd be amazing. You know, my daughter, I think she was probably 10 at the time. She thinks it's so cool. You've got slides and ball pools and sleeping pods and all that kind of stuff. He's like, all right, yeah, jump in an Uber tomorrow. Come over. I'll take you around. We can have lunch together. I'm like, kidding? Are you like actually kidding? Because we will come. I got 4 kids upstairs. He's like, yeah, I'd be happy. 100% come. So I go back upstairs and I say, get everybody out. Right, okay, everybody, we got a day trip tomorrow. We're going to Googleplex. So we're going to go. And they all look at me like, you just took the bins out. What are you talking about? Like, how did that happen? I'm like, you talk to people. That's how it happens. Here's a little lesson in networking. I just helped a guy and now he's helping me back. So sure enough, we went out there and we did the whole thing, man. We got to do the Google Earth thing, the
Yes.
ball pool, the sleeping pods. Then he showed us the main hall. Then we had lunch there. You know, you can have whatever you want, right?
Yes.
It was unreal. The Google Auto car thing was driving around. People were flying around on their bikes. It was everything my daughter imagined it to be, and
Yes.
more. But we had to leave because Sergey and Bryn were going to come down and give some address about like what was going on and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. Now I want to, talk to us. What was a day in the life like in the early Google days? And then we will, I'll ask you about what do you think's going on in there these days.
Okay. Okay. I'm prepared. What was a day like? I mean, it was, it really was a joyful place to work. You know, coming into Google, being very appreciative of the opportunity that had been created there to, you know, work on products and deliver products that were affecting the lives of, you know, at the time, hundreds of millions, approaching billions of users. And opportunity was abundant. I mean, Google was, you know, really maybe like one of the best business models that has ever existed, you know, to provide a search engine with an advertising experience baked into it. And so the company was working in earnest at all times to make the most of that opportunity. And, you know, I think that people talk a lot about kind of Google's culture. I think one of the most remarkable things about how Google managed its growth was to try to retain a sense of its early culture in a really rapid stage of expansion for employees there. And so, you know, really basic things like that were just drilled into us at all times, like focus on the user, do things that work well for users. What problem are you solving for users? If you're not doing that, you're not, you know, go away. And so, like, you know, working in that environment, being given quite a bit of autonomy and, you know, ability to sort of think creatively about your specific space and what you were doing, You know, we were very busy and we were all very, I think, enthusiastic about both the company and the opportunity that it presented.
Yeah, they rewrote a lot of rules on, you know, all kinds of things, right? You know, bring your pets to work and all of that kind of stuff. Everything was geared around lifestyle.
I mean, you know, the way I would position it is they invested a ton of money in their recruiting. Like they spent a lot of time trying to find the people that they thought were the best fit for their culture, for their skills and abilities. And once they brought them in those doors, they wanted to keep them, right? The goal, what like they wanted to make them productive and keep them happy there. And you know, if you look at somebody like me, I ended up staying there for 13 years. I'm sure that their psyop worked on me, right? Like I stayed there a lot longer than I expected because, you know, I think that their approach to respecting their employees and enabling and empowering their employees was one that uh, worked very well for the people that were there.
Yeah. And I just realized actually that I said Sergey and Brin. Obviously, Sergey Brin was one of the founders and Eric Schmidt. So it was Sergey and Eric that were going to come and
Oh,
do
okay.
an address. But
Uh-huh.
Eric's since left. Now there's and huge red flags are thrown up in the Bitcoin space about Google being
Yeah.
centralized,
Mm-hmm.
spying on you, keeping all of your data, you know, all of this kind of stuff. How does that sit now? Knowing what you knew, what Google used to be, and what it was like when you worked there, and the things and the
Yeah.
ethos and everything, did you see a change? Do you feel that? Do you believe there has been a change? Do you think there is some kind of capture there?
Okay. This is a very complex topic. Definitely Google changed over the 13 years that I was there. Definitely it got bigger, more corporate. It lost many of its, I think, kind of like its cultural identity in ways that I think, you know, I think it tried very hard to hang on to those principles and those ideals, but a company finally the Google experiment didn't scale to the size of Google, right? So I think from like a culture point of view, I think it became harder and harder for Google to preserve that identity and that sort of special thing that it had early on. Although I still think it's likely a very special place to work. Um, and so part of it is like, you know, a company grows up, a company gets older. Another thing that has happened to Google is that, you know, the growth trajectory that it was on forever, I think it's been harder and harder for the company to sustain that growth. And so the screws have to tighten, right? I mean, Google is a public company, it has shareholders and obligations and all those things. And even though it always really tried to actually be kind of anti-establishment, we're not going to be a conventional public company. That was their kind of ethos. You know, that's like an ever tightening screw, right? I mean, it's just like you have to deliver. And I think, you know, I think that the company finally got to a spot where they had to manage the teams. They had to reset things. They had to drive layoffs and other things that I think have created massive ripples across the Google culture. And now I'm just speculating because I'm not there. But, you know, the people that I still know that are there, they do acknowledge that, you know, Google has entered another phase. Like it's a different company than it was, you know, 15 years ago. And of course it is. Now the other side of the question that you're asking me is about kind of like Google being too centralized and Google being kind of this like data hungry monster kind of thing. Um, and I would say that, you know, there's no question that Google needs data to deliver its services and to make them as good as possible for users. And I know because I've been on that side of the fence that, you know, Google goes like they spend astronomical amounts of money every year to protect the data that they use to improve the quality of their services. no feature ships inside of Google without like committees of people reviewing and making sure that there's no low risk for leakage, that the data goes somewhere where it can be wiped out and deleted at the user's request, and it's all covered under the explicit terms that have been covered. So it's like, it's very, very careful about that. Now, some of that care and attention was in response to missteps that the company had taken in the past. So, you know, its reputation is like partially earned from things that happened in the past that didn't, you know, that weren't right. And then I think partially kind of conspiracy theory kind of fears about, it has this much power, it has this much data, what will it do with it, what could it do with it? And I think that's very hard to combat that, you know, kind of like FUD, if you will, about what Google might be doing with your data, particularly when the internet itself is a very leaky data platform. You know, I mean, you can go search for some new shoes on Google, land on a web page, and, you know, 15 third-party cookies are now attached to you because you landed on that web page. They know the URL that sent you there mentioned a Google search, and they're going to bombard you with, you know, ads about this everywhere you go. It feels like Google sold your data, but in fact, you sold your data when you travel to that website from Google. And I think that's, you know, it's kind of a blurry area that I think it's easy for like misperceptions to arise about Google's role in a lot of this. And of course, Google has powered so much of how the internet works that you can't like not point the finger at them at some level. But, you know, I'm sympathetic to the plight of Google in trying to fight the good fight. I believe that they sincerely in their hearts are attempting to do that. But they are big and powerful, and they do have a lot of data, and those are just realities that are kind of part of how the internet works these days.
Yeah, it is. And was there any weird kind of shenanigans with Eric's departure, or was that just, no, it's time for me to go, or you don't know, don't care?
I mean, there was no sort of like internal memo that revealed something deeper than, you know, probably what's publicly on record. I think, you know, I think that Eric and Larry and Sergey all, you know, put a lot of their life and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into Google, and at some point probably wanted to let their attentions go elsewhere. So they were looking for like the right times to kind of make those changes. Eric handed off to Larry. Larry was CEO for several years. Larry handed off to Sundar, who's now the current CEO. I think it's a natural progression, and I think the leadership changes at Google have all been very carefully thought through and executed well.
What was your proudest moment? What was the best thing that you worked on whilst you were there?
Well, I mean, I think I look fondly at many parts of my Google career, but I joined the Android team kind of 2012, right around the Android Jelly Bean release.
Right.
And I got the chance to work on sort of what we called like the voice experience for Android. It was basically talking to your phone and getting it to do stuff for you, including search, but also like operate your phone in different ways. It was like a really interesting project because we were starting to use some of the new machine learning, you know, techniques that were driving really rapid gains in speech recognition and natural language understanding, but it was still not quite good enough to like work the way things work today with a lot of these assistants and agents. So you had to figure out how to craft a product that kind of covered over the shortcomings, but actually felt good and reliable and useful to users. And I think that was just a really fun time to be building something. And of course, you know, I think that turned into, you know, it was the precursor to a lot of the kind of like voice experiences that are pervasive today, including kind of Google's, you know, big effort around the Google Assistant. So I was very proud to be part of like building that. And not only that, I found it very personally rewarding to work with that product.
All right, mate. Love it. So I remember you've just reminded me all of those little figures and statues, all of the different Android
Yes.
releases, right? Yeah, we've got pictures
Mhm.
of with all of those. I'm going to send you the blog post because I kept a blog. We did this when we were traveling around the world. We traveled almost 3 years with the kids constantly.
Wow. Good for
So
you.
I'll send you that moment. I'm sure you'll have fond memories. And yeah, okay, Blockstream. That's your next journey.
It
Somehow
is.
you ended up at a Bitcoin company. So at some point during all of this fiatness around just doing the usual career, um, somebody spoke to you about Bitcoin, or you read something, or you heard something. What was the
It's
moment?
true.
Where can you pin it down to?
Well, okay, so first of all, I should slap myself because the moment should have been a lot earlier, but it wasn't. Um, one of my close personal friends from my university days is a co-founder of Blockstream.
Hmm.
So Eric Svensson, he's the president and CFO. We went to university together. We've been close friends basically our whole lives since. And I remember in 2014 or thereabouts, he was telling me about this company he found called Blockstream and what they were all about. And he started telling me a little bit about Bitcoin at the time. And I was listening to him from my, big inflated, I'm so important at Google kind of mindset of like, oh, this cute little thing, this project that people are working on. And he'd tell me, like I just remember over the years, he was explaining to me, oh, well, Bitcoin has these scalability problems. And so we're working on these solutions that will help to Bitcoin to scale. And he was talking a little bit about Blockstream's vision. I was always thinking about it from the perspective of, if I was in a small startup, what strategy would I take with these kinds of problems? I wasn't actually paying attention to the interesting technology that he was telling me about as much as how his startup was navigating that world. Um, and in the back of my mind, I thought, hey, Eric is working. It sounds like he's assembled, like with Adam Back and others, like an incredible team of like researchers and engineers. And that's a company of interest to me, just purely from a perspective of I wonder what they're going to do. Um, and so over the years we would talk about how things were going for the company. I remember when the 2017 price spike went up, and I remember calling Eric and with again completely ignorant of like the fundamentals of Bitcoin, telling him this might be a good time to sell some of your Bitcoin because man, can you believe this? I can't believe this. And I think fortunately Eric probably ignored me. And anyways, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. So it was staring me right in the face, and I didn't do my homework. I was too busy thinking about, whatever I was working on and my job to do the research. And it wasn't until post-pandemic, I actually finally got really serious about the idea of leaving Google. I felt like if I didn't do it soon, I might never do it. And I decided to pull the trigger. And I was actually just reaching out to Eric to connect me to people he knew in the startup community. And he said, wait a second, I want you to meet Adam and I want you to talk to Adam about what we're doing. And because, I know you don't know that much about Bitcoin, but we think we're looking for a product leader like you to come in and help us, kind of like uh, upgrade the way that we're working. And so that's when I finally said, well, wait a second, like, I don't know anything about this technology. I'm not qualified to do that, Eric. No, I can't do that. But I started trying to learn a bit more about it. And that's when you talk about the light bulbs going off and different things. For me, that's when I started really realizing some of the parallels between the web and Bitcoin, like these being these open, permissionless networks that were empowering and enabling access of something fundamental and important to the world to be like, accessible in a new way that was kind of sticking its thumb in the eye of the establishment and the privilege that had control over the existing system. All of that really appealed to me, especially thinking about its applications to kind of the developing world and like banking the unbanked and things like that, I just thought, wow, this is actually a really important technology that I don't understand. Of course, I read the white paper. Of course, I did those things. For me, maybe I'm not visionary enough for that to just like suddenly turn into this like glowing, I see it all come together moment. But I spent the time, I read, technical books on how does Bitcoin work. And I began to see the beauty of the incentive structure that had been created, a protocol that perpetuates itself because every actor in the system is only operating in self-interest. And yet that creates a system of fairness and robustness. It became clear to me that this was like an amazing invention. I like the speculation that Bitcoin wasn't invented, but it was discovered. Either way, like, wow, what a technology. And then also to recognize that as incredible as that technology is, it's not perfect yet in terms of letting people use it and access it. It has to confront some challenges with scaling. All these things that I felt like actually Blockstream was really obsessing about were the problems that could help upgrade Bitcoin and help make it kind of the system that was ready to serve the world, if you will. So I really, it occurred to me that I was looking at an amazing opportunity, a company that thought they needed my skills, but actually that I felt like I had a ton to learn from. And I basically curtailed my job search and decided to jump in with 2 feet and just go on the learning adventure, and I joined the company completely ill-equipped to advise them on their product roadmap, but really just able to help them look at their process, and work with them on articulating a strategy, thinking about the key goals that we would set as a company and how we would align our efforts to better achieve those goals. It was very like consultant-esque at first. And it's just been, I still always feel like I'm learning something, but, I'm only just now getting a handle on kind of the deeper vision that Adam and Eric and all the founders of Blockstream had, and trying to help perpetuate that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the right place. If you got any questions, just call Adam up. You're like, yeah. So it just occurred to me that
Yes.
who else to have on the end of the phone when you're having those moments when you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're like, whoa, hang on a minute. That's all clicking. That makes sense. And another thing, like, I love those moments.
And Adam's never one to shy away from the details. I mean, for all of his contributions, he knows everything, or not everything. Nobody knows everything, but he's got such deep domain knowledge. He understands the cryptography. He understands the protocol. He understands mining. He understands custody. He just understands all the pieces so well. And I think he's also like an avid investor. He thinks about the markets. He really thinks about this from all sides, and he's a great resource, obviously, for Blockstream.
Degen trader, I think, is what you meant to say. I didn't know that about Adam until I met him in person, and
that's right.
We were sitting around having a discussion, and he was talking about writing calls and options or MicroStrategy and this, that, and I just looked at him. I'm like, Ed, like, why the fuck would you bother with all of this stuff? Seriously. And he's like, yeah, well, I just like trading, like, gambling and stuff. And he has had the famous bets over the years as well. So yeah. But he's a fun guy at the conferences. He's just cruising around with the plebs, like,
absolutely. He's in our health forums. He's helping people, with their customer support tickets, and he just loves it. And meanwhile, I do think like a lot of his ideas for trading solutions that ultimately should migrate to a system like Bitcoin. I mean, this is like sort of the core idea of the Liquid network, which is one of Blockstream's, like as a technology provider, we provide the tech that enables that. It's like, hey, finance doesn't work right either. Money doesn't work right, but neither does finance. you've got all these people that are in positions to front run trades and like actually hold, custody of your assets. And we can actually imagine a world where none of that is necessary, and counterparties can find each other and trade trustlessly, through a network that doesn't require all of the other infrastructure around it. It's much more streamlined and much more equitable, if you will. And I think these are some of the ideas that I think led to some of Blockstream's key investments.
So Liquid, let's stick there, because it's over the last few months, it's kind of picked up steam, to say the least, or come into its own. A lot of people have been migrating it, well, playing around, let's say, where they weren't before, because of the idiotic nature of spamming the Bitcoin blockchain in with cat pictures. We won't say too much more about that, and spiking fees. It's pushed people to think or look around for other layer 2 solutions. And there's been a little bit of a kind of, I don't know, muddying the waters around Lightning as well. Seems to be there's some kind of agenda going on, which behind the scenes, which I'm not entirely sure, how that's all going to play out. But what that has done, there's even been the Liquid torch being passed around. Were you aware of that? Some plebs have been doing that.
I am not aware of the Liquid torch.
Okay, the Liquid torch has been going around Twitter, whereby people will add some sats to it when they receive it and then send it on. This first happened with the Lightning torch back in goodness knows when. 17 or 18, I think. I think Hodler started that. So the Liquid torch is being passed around Liquid Twitter. What is the Liquid network? Can you explain to people that have, it's on their radar, but have never looked into it?
Sure. Well, first, I guess, like from a technical point of view, Liquid is a side chain. And what that means is that you can peg Bitcoin into the Liquid network and then use it in the form of Liquid Bitcoin to do things on Liquid. I think Liquid is really interesting from the point of view of it introduces the idea of multiple assets and a network in which you can actually trade and exchange those assets. So think of things like stablecoins, which are a really important, part of many people's existence all around the world, and also financial assets, debt, equity, things of that nature. Liquid is built to support financial activities. It's built for auditability and compliance. So it's not so much the write a smart contract to define a meme coin. Of course, you can issue a meme coin on Liquid, but I think we really designed it with the idea of mature financial applications being able to migrate onto this kind of an infrastructure and trade seamlessly with Bitcoin. So if you imagine a world where Bitcoin is a much more common trading pair to other financial assets, or an underpinning currency or money to collateralize assets and different things, Liquid is a platform that enables you to do all those kinds of financial activities. It was designed with a couple of important features that sort of you couldn't get from Bitcoin itself. One is confidentiality. So Liquid is a blockchain. It's got a public ledger, but all the transactions that are written to that chain, you can't see what asset was traded and what amount was traded. All of the validation that happens to ensure that that transaction is valid and fair it uses zero knowledge proofs to verify. And so then that means that assets that and money that trades hand on Liquid doesn't have that kind of like public front running opportunity. You propose a trade, it goes into the Liquid mempool. Nobody can really see what's being traded. It's only auditable between the counterparties. And so that's a really nice feature for financial use cases. It's also attractive, I think, to people who are privacy advocates and other things. Also, Liquid, it doesn't use mining. It has instead a kind of like a federated approach where there are validators on the network. We call them functionaries that manage the consensus process and write each additional block to the blockchain. Because it's sort of coordinated amongst this sort of mutually distrusting set of functionaries, it can be much more predictable. We have 1-minute blocks, 2 minutes to finality, so no reorgs after 2 minutes. And that, again, is very appealing to the financial markets. But I think what's really actually had, Liquid become interesting recently is that Liquid is not as congested as Bitcoin. And people are finding an escape from some of the fee pressure that they're encountering on Bitcoin main chain. And that enables a number of interesting use cases where people can, for instance, DCA and accumulate their sats in a network like Liquid. And only when they have sort of a material amount that they want to take to, cold storage, do they peg out and move that to, main chain for custody. And so that's, those are kind of examples of how Liquid has recently started to gain some traction, I think, amongst a wider set of users. And I think it's really understandable that, for a long time that was not interesting or useful because there wasn't actually a reason to accept those trade-offs and move into the Liquid network versus just transacting on Bitcoin itself. But as Bitcoin becomes more congested, rightly or wrongly, depending on how it's used, as Bitcoin gets that increased traffic, which we always expect it will, I think solutions such as Liquid, sidechains, Lightning, and payment channels, like other solutions, are necessary to help enable Bitcoin to take the next step and accommodate the next generation of people that want to use it and hold it.
Right. Okay. So let's try and give a what kind of person is it most likely to attract? It's not the
I think of Liquid as a financial layer. So I think that the trading use cases are compelling. We actually see, an increasing number of issuers coming to Liquid to issue their assets because they can do so in a compliant, auditable way that is robust. It's based on Bitcoin fundamentals. And you can do really cool trading things like atomic swaps now, where you're actually trading Bitcoin for Tether, or a security token for Bitcoin or for Tether, and do so in a confidential way using like a decentralized exchange as your order book. So the investment use cases, I think, are compelling, and really where we've spent a lot of time trying to invest and make sure that the infrastructure works for those. Now, we also see people viewing it as a complementary solution for just general Bitcoin settlement needs, right? Because it's relatively fast. It's not as fast as Lightning, but it's relatively fast. You can do things like, faster settlement time. You have less congestion, so things are cheaper on Liquid to do, which I think has actually drawn a lot of people over these days. And what they find is, this experience is so familiar to me. It works like Bitcoin, except it's faster and cheaper. Wow, that's actually a really good experience, and they enjoy it. And I think it's been sort of an eye-opening moment for people who have actually made that transition and tried to use the network for that reason.
So to come back to the trading, which is interesting, do you foresee, or is it even happening? For example, MicroStrategy could issue shares on the network, and a Bitcoin pleb that might want to invest in that. Right now, the only way, if you've got to divest out of Bitcoin, for example, to buy MicroStrategy shares, you have to go to a brokerage or an exchange, sell the Bitcoin, get the fiat, go to another exchange to buy the shares, and you never actually hold those MSTR shares. They're, some digital certificate held by whoever. You've got taxable event on the way out, most likely on your Bitcoin. And then when you buy the MicroStrategy shares and they go up, and you might want to ping those back out and then bring them back to Bitcoin, you've got another tax. So there's a lot of hassle, right? So how would that work? How would that look on the Liquid network?
Well, okay, let's take the hypothetical that MicroStrategy wants to issue equity in the form of security tokens on the Liquid network. They would use tools that would enable them to kind of create these shares, reference the backing kind of legal documentation that authorizes them as like legal security tokens. There's certain rules that they can impose about, only accredited investors or whatever rules they need to use to kind of adhere to their compliance. Now those shares exist as tokens on Liquid. And so, yes, it is easy for an investor, assuming they've met all the criteria, to go to a decentralized order book, find somebody who is advertising to sell those shares to them, take the order, do a atomic swap trade, from your custody, your Bitcoin, hold the MicroStrategy shares now in your self-custody wallet, your Liquid wallet, and you have them, and they're, effectively, it's the same as holding equity through a brokerage account or anything else. But you're doing it in that more kind of decentralized way that Bitcoin has like sort of enabled. And the same is true for trading it, right? When you're ready to sell, you go to a venue that lets you sell your shares. Again, come back to something like a trading platform that's decentralized. A really prominent one right now on Liquid is called SideSwap. They advertise a number of security tokens that people can trade. In fact, SideSwap has done exactly what we're describing. They've issued their own equity shares of their company on Liquid. So you can go hold shares in their company, and all of this is sort of tradable through these protocols that are quite familiar, I think, to a lot of Bitcoin users.
That was going to be my next question. What kind of security tokens are what companies have been, looking at this, and again, looking out 5 years, once all the accounting has changed and kicked in and whatever else, and more companies are holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, I see something like this becoming interesting for companies to issue securitized tokens onto a trusted platform where there is going to be a whole new market where people are going to be looking to invest in that.
My theory is that this is not going to happen from the top down. This is not going to happen with, US securities leading the way. This is going to happen with developing countries and markets that maybe don't have the same financial infrastructure that, like US securities have today, but they want to leapfrog into this, and they want to actually introduce, their own markets for trading. And they will embrace technologies like this to get a leg up and to actually gain all the efficiency. They can actually offer a solution that can stay compliant with whatever rules they want, and also kind of cut out a lot of the infrastructure that had to exist in the fiat world because of the arcane systems that were underpinning all the trading, both in terms of settling your fiat and also like passing around the actual notes that represented the securities. All of that can be dramatically streamlined, and I think you're going to see that happening first in developing countries that want to leapfrog into this world. And we've seen some really interesting adoption stories already on Liquid. For example, in Mexico, there's a form of debt called a promissory note, which is a way a lot of businesses and individuals pay for things. They take out a promissory note. It's a line of credit, and they pay it back over time. But that promissory note has kind of an elevated legal standing in the Mexican system. And there's a company there that has actually tokenized those promissory notes, which is an really interesting idea, because now they can package up promissory notes and sell them to somebody who wants to finance their operations to actually issue more credit. And by tokenizing those, they can provide transparent guarantees to the financer that these are not rehypothecated. We didn't take the same promissory notes and package them into, and sell them to multiple different parties. You can actually verify that you own this debt. And that enables a global marketplace to come and actually participate in a local marketplace. And that's the kind of, I think, opportunity that we're seeing unfold, right? It's like breaking down the walls between systems is actually really powerful and a problem that does need to be solved because there's no regulatory body that governs that process. So now you can use a trustless or a trust minimized system and enable a kind of a global participation in these local markets. I think that's a really exciting direction. You also see a lot of interest in kind of people trying to tokenize what they consider to be like less liquid, illiquid assets that don't have efficient trading platforms, but you bring them into this kind of an environment and you can access all of the liquidity in the network and actually make something that's kind of hard to sell shares in much easier. So the progress is going to happen kind of, I think, it's going to look like it happens on the edges and then encroaches, moves in on those like big centralized actors that, you know, will be the last ones to move from their positions on these old arcane systems.
Hmm. Does it solve the what is it at the moment? T+2, T+3 is like
Of
trade plus
course,
2
I mean,
days
it's
settlement.
T+2 minutes, right? It's
Right, there you go.
it solves
Like
it quite well. And
that's
the fact that you're trading your currency that you're trading with and your asset are trading atomically in one transaction, it also solves like a very, painful problem called delivery versus payment, where, one party sends you one asset, have the money gone through? Like trying to time up those two transactions and do it in a fair way has always involved a custodian or some
Mhm.
central party to coordinate that, that fair exchange. It's not necessary on a blockchain.
Yeah, most people the song and dance most people would have to go through is first of all like send an email to find a time to speak to the financial advisor that is looking after that investment, and then have him speak to the other custodial party that is holding the shares to make the transaction, who
Exactly.
then get hold of you and ask for proof of address and proof of bank account and all this, even though you've been the customer for 15 years before they
Yes.
get to sell it. Then they sell it, and then you have to wait 2 days plus 4 if there's a weekend involved before the money is even considered to be wired across to your bank
Right.
account. It is so archaic. It's just ridiculous. And then
You're
you got the
right.
fees
Sure.
involved with both parties as well. I forgot about the fees, of course. How could I?
Exactly. I mean, the fees are, I think, another reason that this migration will be slow, right? You have vested interests in preserving the status quo, who, want to see, well, what's my role in this new system? Like, how am I going to get my taste of the flow? And a lot of them don't, there's no real good answer for that. And, trust minimized system that uses like a Bitcoin like blockchain as its base, I think that efficiency is there, but I just don't think that the entrenched interests of like the big establishment are going to make that transition happen overnight. It's a very slow process.
Mhm.
Um, but it's interesting to see where people are starting to reap the benefits of making that change over. And I think that's where, when we look at the prospects for Liquid as a trading and a financial layer for Bitcoin, we're really excited about the kind of the emerging markets and the places where innovation is a way to actually start up their own economies.
Yeah, for sure. It's I see it clearer now as a tool for the financialization of, well, Bitcoin and the world, to be honest, because if Bitcoin is going to become the world's global reserve currency, like many of us believe it will and should do, then yeah, you're going to need all of this other stuff to be able, well, to at least be there and to be utilized and tested.
That's right. That's our thesis. And, I think Blockstream, again, think about somebody like Adam Back, who has that interest in these financial and trading applications, who has this experience and this kind of understanding of like where all of this leads. We've been placing these bets for a long time on kind of where this all leads, why we've been, working on infrastructure like Liquid, on infrastructure like Lightning. And, while the cause of the recent, fee volatility on the main chain isn't kind of exactly what everybody envisioned would drive that kind of pressure. We have always anticipated that this day will come, and when it comes, we need to have these alternatives in place that are tested, tried and true, and accessible to everyone, so that they can, you know, continue to use Bitcoin in a wide range of ways. But, you know, we're excited about the finance. We're also excited about, you know, people that just want, you know, more convenient ways to quickly accumulate or settle payments using Bitcoin.
I think a lot of the confusion around it is people have been quick to dismiss it as a shitcoin, probably.
Yes,
So,
I know.
Yeah.
I feel, I mean, of course, coming from a Blockstream point of view, I'm not going to agree with that, but, you know, I think there's got to be some room for nuance in how you define something like that. You know, like, sure, anything that's not raw Bitcoin is not as great, right? I think we all agree with that. But you also have to acknowledge the trade-offs and incentives that are in play in these different systems, right? Maybe ETFs are a shitcoin. Maybe liquid Bitcoin could be considered a shitcoin to some. But the fact that it's, you know, its entire process for exchange with Bitcoin is mediated through an open, transparent network and operated by a federation of you know, businesses whose incentives are to operate this network fairly, I think, you know, to me, puts it in a different category from kind of an equity-like staking token that operates at the heart of a network, where all of the parties who have stood up that network stand to benefit if everyone believes this token is the next great thing. I mean, liquid Bitcoin is so far from that reality that to paint them with the exact same brush feels a little lacking in nuance to me.
Lacking in education. I mean, I hadn't heard it explained the way that you've just explained it. So hopefully those listening now will have a clearer picture. It's there. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't. Like, just, I mean, for me, I don't have a need for it right now, but I'm comfortable knowing it's there, and that you know, I'm more aware of what it would be used for. And I think a lot of people.
One other interesting, can I
Sure.
highlight
Yeah,
another
please. Yeah.
interesting feature of it, which I think is actually, you know, maybe compelling to many. So because Liquid is built on a Bitcoin-based protocol, it's quite interoperable with the Lightning Network. And we're seeing a lot of ways that the two networks can benefit each other. So one example that has emerged is there are companies that have, or like Boltz Exchange is a really good example of this, that have enabled users to trustlessly swap Lightning Network sats with liquid Bitcoin. In one transaction, you can send sats across Lightning and have them arrive in your liquid wallet. And the flip side is true. You can send liquid Bitcoin that then turns into sats and travels across the Lightning Network to pay an invoice. And what that means is that people can rebalance their Lightning channels with liquid Bitcoin. They can, if their channel's out of balance, they want to move liquidity to one side or the other, they simply route a payment through, starting with liquid Bitcoin, through the network across their channel to rebalance. And when Boltz first introduced this feature, they did it kind of as like it wasn't even on their main website. It was a completely separate website, sort of an experimental idea. It gained so much traction because it was way more economical and way faster to do than doing a similar kind of a swap on Bitcoin main chain, right? And so people found, here's a really great economical way to balance liquidity in my Lightning channels. And it's taken off to such an extent that, you know, first Boltz moved it into their main product. It was like sort of featured there. And then it's like almost overtaken all other forms of swaps that they use. So it's just the economic reality that this works better for the use case. It solves a problem, is driving that adoption. And we've seen really interesting ideas emerging now. Jan3, which is another Liquid Federation company, just released the Aqua wallet. It's actually using that feature to let people basically make any Lightning payments without having to have their own Lightning wallet. They hold liquid Bitcoin, and when they want to send a payment that goes somewhere over Lightning, they simply route it through this like swap process, and it reaches the destination as in the form of Lightning sats. And so that's like really powerful innovation that's springing up on the interoperability of these different layer 2 solutions that complement each other.
That's what the guys were using Aqua Wallet to do the Liquid Torch.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
does this also open up the channels that you can find? Should it improve the payment? We've all had a failed Lightning payment in our
Right.
hands before because, you know, not enough, you couldn't find a route or whatever else. Does that
Right.
complement as well?
Well, it doesn't directly address that problem, but I think if it helps with managing liquidity in the Lightning Network and improves the facilities available to people, then that should help with payment routing kind of, you know, naturally. Another thing we've seen with Lightning is that, you know, there's still a lot of engineering work that needs to go on to make Lightning resilient to the fee volatility that we're experiencing on main chain, right? I think a lot of Lightning engineering focus right now is on how do we handle kind of the volatile fee environment that we're now operating under. There is interest, and people have been talking about, could we actually use payment channels on Liquid that can actually interface with the main Lightning Network? Could we actually let you open a channel with Liquid Bitcoin directly? And then as you route a payment across that channel and into the main Lightning Network, it's automatically swapped for sats. And so that's an interesting idea that some of the LSPs are interested in, because then they have they can offer like sort of lower cost opening of channels and balancing liquidity in channels. And then that also adds to the overall liquidity of the Lightning Network and potentially could help with, you know, general like success and just access to Lightning for more people. So we think that, you know, and this is not unique to Liquid necessarily. You could spin up a number of different side chains, and the promise of Lightning is that it can connect all these different kinds of layer 2s in a way that is going to feel very seamless to users. So you might be in a Fedimint and you want to send an eCash token to me as Liquid Bitcoin, and Lightning can facilitate that across like a route that travels the 3 networks. And I think that kind of use case is really inspiring kind of for the future of how Bitcoin can scale and adapt.
It must enhance privacy as well.
Well,
If you're
that's
going
true.
over,
I mean,
if you're going over 3 networks, for example, to, you know,
and 2 of those networks being, well, I mean, actually, Lightning itself has privacy benefits over Bitcoin main chain. So does Liquid. So does Fedimint. I mean, like, yes, I think that using layer 2 networks does enhance privacy in many cases, and so that will probably be another, you know, way that a focus of innovation, I would say, you know, is that people will take advantage of that to deploy new solutions that people love.
and one of the wallet providers that spring to mind that should probably look into doing this would be Moon Wallet, because their Lightning wallet become unusable in high fee environment. Because I think you would basically, every time you tried to send a Lightning payment over Moon, they would literally open a channel and close a channel there and then, and like it was
Right.
unusable. Can't do it. Like, this is pointless.
I think it's been a rough ride recently for a lot of the non-custodial Lightning wallets to navigate and adapt. You know, but I guess like if we want to put a positive spin on it, it's like this environment is driving some urgency for new innovation to spring forward. I know Blockstream is really trying to, again, our mission being to help people adopt Bitcoin. We want to enable more developers to take advantage of the Lightning Network and to take advantage of the possible intersection of Liquid and Lightning. We have a Lightning node as a service solution called Greenlight, which we make available to developers so that they can basically offer Lightning in a wallet without having to kind of manage all the complexity of the Lightning node itself. The Lightning node runs in the cloud. The keys for that Lightning node are secured in your wallet in a non-custodial fashion. And that kind of a solution, we think, you know, at scale will help a lot of developers take advantage of the kind of cutting edge of, you know, improvements we're making to solve some of these pain points that you're seeing today, with, you know, users almost feeling surprised by the expense of using Lightning non-custodial.
Okay, so that's liquid, but you got other stuff going on under the hood at Blockstream. Obviously, the Jade, the hardware wallet. I think most
Yes.
people are probably familiar with that. You know, that's been around a long time.
It
Is there
has.
any big news for that coming up, or is that just like keep that ticking over? No need to mess with a good product. What's the in-house kind of thoughts?
We're really excited about the Jade. You know, I think in the last year, maybe year and a half, there's not a single aspect of the experience of owning a Jade that we haven't improved in many different ways. But you know, we're just constantly focused on trying to better simplify the onboarding for new users who want to move into the cold storage world using Blockstream Jade. We try to make it as easy as possible. You know, walking you through it. Jade has a nice like color screen display, so it can kind of like step you through the process. And then Jade is also very powerful. It's designed to kind of adapt as you take on more sophisticated use cases. When you want to move to multi-sig, Jade can help you do that. If you want to try to use Jade's camera and keep it completely offline, never plugged in, you can transact with the Jade, you know, using QR codes and things like that. So we let you kind of move towards these more advanced use cases. Yes, we do have more exciting things in the works for Jade. Nothing that I necessarily want to talk about today, but I would say midsummer should be a really interesting moment for the Blockstream Jade.
Anything else going on there that you wanted to cover before we start wrapping it up?
Well, thanks. No, I mean, I think you know, just if you're trying to get your head around everything that we do at Blockstream, you know, I use the word full stack. And if you think about all of these pieces, hopefully you get a feel for how they fit together. You know, we have a research team that's working at the protocol level, trying to improve Bitcoin and enhance things and add new cryptographic techniques that make things more private and more efficient. And then we've built these layer 2 technologies that help Bitcoin adapt and support new use cases like finance, like payments on the Lightning Network, really helping Bitcoin grow and scale and be more suitable for users across the full range of use cases that we think are important to help further Bitcoin adoption. And lastly, we've put, you know, these kind of wallet solutions in place like Blockstream Jade, Blockstream Green, which is our software wallet, that enable people to come and take advantage of all those features. So it all stacks up into one big vertical solution that we imagine will be the sort of the foundational pieces of kind of the future of Bitcoin. So it's a very exciting place that I've landed, that I'm able to kind of contribute, and I feel lucky that I've had the opportunity.
Yeah, man, it's it's been a great story getting to know you. And I guess like last question, practical question about the company, is is it standing alone, or is it still burning venture capital cash? Is the revenue stream all sorted out? Like where is it in that arc of startup to, you know, established company?
We're still looking for opportunities to raise money. We believe that that's the fastest path to kind of accelerate, to get to a point where we can be fully self-sufficient. But we are, you know, we're in the process. You know, we're actively talking to investors and thinking about how to navigate that going forward. But you know, I think that most of us in the company aren't really worrying too much about that. We're keeping our heads down and focusing on kind of like the projects that we think are delivering value for users.
Awesome. All right. Final question. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
Ooh. Hmm. You know, I would want that orange pill to have some scale. I would like it to reach a wide number of people. You know, this is probably a lazy answer, but maybe I'd give it to, you know, Sundar Pichai, you know, somebody in a position that's Google's CEO, somebody who's in a position to deliver services that can reach the widest number of users and really facilitate, you know, the broad benefits that I think Bitcoin has to offer to the world.
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. They've got the Play Store, right? They've got so much. So many people are, tangled up in Google for better or for worse. We've all got Gmail accounts. We've all got Google calendars, the things that actually work. Google Photos, Google Maps. It's so much.
If you
YouTube.
believe, if you believe that Bitcoin is internet money, Google is the internet company, and I think that the alignment of interest there is greater than you'd think, and it's not even really about Google capturing more value. It's really about facilitating open access to money and information, and then providing that as services that people can access and benefit from.
Built-in wallets on Android phones. No backdoors,
Yes.
please. If you're listening, Google people, like, don't fucking rug pull us. That's got to be absolutely 100% clear. But maybe Blockstream can help build
Yeah,
that.
that would be great.
Build
We would take that phone call.
Yeah, I bet, mate. I bet. And you could be Johnny on the spot for that one with your 13 years
Sure.
experience there.
That's
Well,
right.
Jeff, it's been great to get to know you. Really appreciate you coming on and covering everything that we've covered today. How can people reach out and learn more about you or Blockstream, or if they want to get in touch in any way, what's the best way?
I mean, you can follow us on Twitter at our Blockstream handle. You can come to our website, blockstream.com. I don't have a major presence myself on Twitter, so I don't have anything to advertise there, but there's a lot of ways to follow along with Blockstream. Follow Adam, follow Blockstream, and try our products.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on, mate. Have a great day.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. Bye.